right, hi again, everybody. So I am currently backing my car. I just had lunch at Del Taco, and then I went to CVS and grabbed a couple of things. Scratching my ear right now, and I'm waiting for traffic to go away from me so I can go home. Anyway, so I thought I would just talk a little bit about genealogy because I love genealogy. I've been kind of lazy about it the last probably few months. This last few months have been kind of crazy with work and everything, which is kind of annoying. But I got into genealogy probably, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago. And originally the idea was that I wanted to, I guess, find out more, especially about my mom's side of the family. Like, I already knew a lot about my dad's side of the family because my cousins on his side do a lot of work on genealogy. They've done so for years and years and years. So there was already a family history with my dad's side of the family. But with my mom's side of the family, not so much. And it was interesting because originally, so we, for example, sorry, the light isn't right in my eyes. I had always thought that my grandmother, for example, on my mom's side was Irish because she was such a solid Catholic, and it just seemed like it just sort of made sense that of course she must be mostly Irish or all Irish or something like that. But I could never square that quite away with her last name, which was Shackelford. So, speed bump. Anyway, so I joined Ancestry.com a while ago, and then subsequently, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, did the Ancestry DNA, which was pretty interesting. But what I discovered was that, and actually this is really kind of fascinating for me, because I was a Catholic from day one, cradle Catholic, all of that. Anyway, so what I found out was that my grandmother, she had lived in a convent school when she was in high school, basically, from the time she was about 12 and through high school. But what I discovered by looking into her family, into the Shackelfords, was that they were not Catholic. They were, I don't know if they were Methodist or whatever the local Protestant sect was back in those days, in the early 20th century in Kentucky and Pulaski County. And so, anyway, which meant, and actually it kind of goes back when I started to look farther back, it was more and more and more generations of Protestants, going all the way back to the to the time of Henry VIII, actually, when you think about it. And so my assumption, and I think I'm right about this, is that she must have converted to Catholicism when she was in high school. And for me, that was really fascinating and appropriate, and thank goodness that she did, I guess I would say, because if it hadn't been for her conversion to Catholicism, my mom wouldn't have gone to a Catholic university, therefore she would never have met my dad, and therefore I would not exist. So thank you, grandmother, for converting to Catholicism. That was good. But it also means for me that 3 of my grandparents are converts to Catholicism, which is really kind of cool. So my grandfather on my dad's side, for example, he converted to Catholicism when he was a kid. So when he was in high school, he went to St. Ignatius High School in San Francisco, and he had come from, I think they were Methodist. I don't know if they were particularly religious or anything like that. Maybe they were, I don't know. But anyway, so he converted when he was just 13 years old. So he was just a kid, and that was his own choice. He wanted to do it, and apparently his parents didn't stand in his way. So yay, good for them. And then my other grandfather on my mom's side, we assume must have converted, because I don't think I ever met him. They had divorced long ago, so I never met him. But he apparently was buried in a Catholic cemetery when he passed away a few years ago. So obviously that would mean that he must have been a Catholic, because you can't be buried in a Catholic cemetery if you're not a Catholic. So I don't know why. I just think that's just a really interesting thing, that 3 of my grandparents, for different reasons, are converts to Catholicism. And then my one grandparent who was just always Catholic was my grandmother on my dad's side, and of course she was 100% Irish, so she was a Gaffney. So at any rate, so that turned out to be pretty interesting. And it turns out that, I guess it was really interesting to find out and to give my mother a story, because there had been sort of this patchy family history that didn't really exist very much, and nobody really on her side of the family had time to ever investigate it. So for me, it was kind of a privilege to be able to do it. And what I discovered was a lot of interesting things. For one thing, I found out that one of my ancestors on her side was a Revolutionary veteran, which means that I qualify for the Daughters of the American Revolution. I still have to finish up my paperwork for that, but I'm working on it, sort of. So there was that. I found out that actually, that if you go back far enough, and this is probably true of anybody who is remotely white European, that at some point or another you're probably going to be related to Charlemagne or William the Conqueror or Henry II or something like that. And so sure enough, it was interesting because at one point in my mother's family history, I found the name Howard, and that went back to the late 1500s. And I thought, those Howards, as in Howard, as in Duke of York Howard, as in the Howards who were featured in A Man for All Seasons, one of my all-time favorite movies about St. Thomas More. And it turns out, yes, it was those Howards, although it was a different Howard from the one that was in the movie. So the one in the movie is Thomas Howard, 3rd Duke of Norfolk, but it turns out that my ancestor was his cousin or grandfather, I forgot, I have to look it up again. Thomas Howard, I think it's uncle, I don't know. Anyway, second Duke of Norfolk, and he's my great whatever grandfather. And so then when you start to look at the Howards, and then you look at the women that they were married to, that's when it gets really interesting. And one thing that I discovered in genealogy that makes it interesting is always to follow the female line. Like if you ever get stuck and you're really looking to go farther back and to find new and interesting relatives, as much as you can, especially when you hit on an ancestor who's a historical figure, follow the women, follow the female line, and you will find really interesting things. So it was really just kind of cool, because then I could tell my mother with no doubt that, guess what? We go back to European royalty, we go back to British royalty and French royalty and all that kind of stuff. And as a Catholic, I also found out that one of my ancestors was St. Louis IX, King of France. I think he's the only king of France that was canonized a Roman Catholic saint. So I thought that was pretty fascinating too. So anyway, so I gotta go, and I'm gonna do more on genealogy. There's a lot to talk about, especially with regards to the Plantagenets and with some of my interesting cousins, like Mark Twain, for example, and Wyatt Earp, and Benjamin Rush, who was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'll see you later. Bye!